On today's show, it's a crossover with Locked On Knicks. Let's get ready for Cavs-Knicks, the twofer on Halloween and November 1st. I'm Chris Manning. It's October 31st. Happy Halloween. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. It's a Locked On Cavs, Locked On Knicks crossover here for today. I'm Chris Manning. Gavin Schall from Locked On Knicks is here. Cavs-Knicks, a twofer. Halloween in Cleveland, November 1st in New York. Gavin, let's start here. The way we're gonna do the show is Cavs stuff, Knicks so far, and then what we're looking for in this game. But on your end of things, are people eagerly anticipating this? Because I sense on the Cleveland side, there's a little bit of, at least from the fan base, Karis LeVert and others have played this down a little bit, but I think there is some anticipation here, some anxiety, let's say, among the fan base a little bit. What is the vibe around this from your perspective here?
You know, it's funny. I haven't really noticed, but maybe I haven't been paying attention enough. But I think given the fact that the Knicks start to the season, it certainly hasn't been disastrous by any means. There may be one more made shot against the Celtics from being 2-1 and being in a pretty good position right now. But I just think like the idea of losing two in a row to Cleveland is nauseating for the Knicks and almost like wiping away some of the smugness we've developed since that series win last year. You could argue justifiably or not. So maybe there's like a little bit of like anxiety. There's certainly some anticipation. On my end, I'm really excited to see it because obviously it depends, and you can let me know on this, who exactly is healthy for Cleveland, but I think it will tell us a lot about both teams. And for the Knicks, I think it's a great opportunity for them to get back into their identity from last year because they beat Cleveland by doubling, tripling, heck, quadrupling down on their strengths in the regular season. And they could certainly use some of that right now because all those strengths this year have been weaknesses for the most part.
Yeah, the injury thing is, I think as far as the start to the Cavs season, to me, that's been the storyline, unfortunately. And that's not the most fun storyline. You could look at how Max Strus has played. You could look at Evan Mobley, but it's the injuries. Darius Garland has missed 2 out of 3 games. Donovan Mitchell has a hamstring issue and missed a game. Jared Allen has not played yet. The latest from the Cavs side of things in terms of who is going to play and who is not going to play, on Monday, Jared Allen practiced and Donovan Mitchell practiced. Darius Garland did not. So that would lead me to think, Gavin, that maybe Tuesday, Wednesday is Jared Allen returns for at least one of those games. They said the timeline for him was returning, and then Mitchell, I would suspect Donovan Mitchell probably wants to play in these games is the other part of this. So I think they'll get at least 2 of those guys back. But I would say, too, that over the weekend, they just played 2 games without Darius Garland, and you felt his absence in a very distinct, big way. So I think they'll miss him for these 2 games. And for me, I like that these games are early in the season because I like that you're not letting something that was such a big deal last April linger too long when there's already a big gap due to the way the schedule works. But I almost don't. If Darius doesn't play in both of these and the Cavs go 0-2 or something, yes, like there will be some like alarm bells, but it's also going to be hard for me to fully wrap my mind around that because Darius is just so integral to this team. So that's like the bummer of this. It's just I would like them to be healthy. I would like both teams to be at full strength if we're going to do this. That's the most fun part about this.
Yeah, how has Cleveland adjusted to him being out so far? I mean, is Donovan Mitchell kind of the functional point guard for the time being, or how are they structuring their offense with him gone?
So Friday when it was Mitchell, no Garland, Mitchell did Donovan Mitchell stuff and went off. Then they blew a 10-point lead to the Thunder and lost. Mitch, what you notice is I think the big weakness in what I would say is Donovan Mitchell's game, which is that he's not a great creator for others. You get into a lot of pick and roll, you get into a lot of ISO. There's less kind of natural movement within the offense when there's no Darius Garland. Things just don't function as well. And on top of that, this team also right now doesn't have what I would consider a more traditional backup point guard. Whether they need that fully or not is, I think, a matter of opinion and style. But they rolled out Ty Jerome on Friday. I don't think Ty Jerome's like really an answer there.
New York legend Ty Jerome, I should add.
I did not realize.
Yeah.
Golden State Warriors two-way standout innings eater king, Ty Jerome, getting a real contract out of this. But so good for him. But he sprained his ankle as well. And then Ricky Rubio is away from the team. So like they don't have like Karis LeVert, bless him, is not going to fill that role exactly, right? So it's kind of becomes a much more direct, simple offense. Like they talked all preseason about this evolution of the offense and speed and motion and evolving things. And there's been some of that so far, but I think it's really hard to do it without Garland. So I don't think you're seeing an offense that is the most modern, updated thing based on what, people on the Knicks side of things might have seen last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my fascination with Cleveland is have they filled that fifth spot? And you can speak on this, but it seems like Max Strus has been exemplary for you guys by and large so far. At least looking at the raw numbers, I think he's fourth in the NBA right now in 3-pointers made per game, and that obviously like heavily shaped how the Knicks were able to guard the Cavs in the playoffs and their willingness to just completely play off Isaac Okoro and forcing you guys pretty early to say like, all right, like maybe he won't be the fixture in this series that we hoped he was going to be, chasing around and bothering Jalen Brunson. And to me, that was sort of the first domino in the Knicks, like just being able to dictate the style of play and sort of make Cleveland like pay and hurt for their weaknesses more than Cleveland was able to make the Knicks pay and hurt for their own. So I'm kind of like, in terms of just the Eastern Conference pecking order, like that's what I'm going to be looking at coming into these games. And to your point, like you can only get so much of an answer there when Cleveland's missing one, if not two, if not three, all-star level guys. But I'm wondering how that will shift how Cleveland guards them. And I'm also wondering if the Knicks guys can kind of get back, particularly Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, our two best players, obviously, if they can get back to who they were last year, because at least in terms of their efficiency, they have not been anything close to that. And the Knicks will obviously need them to be. And Randle in particular is a fascinating player in this. I want to call it a series. It is a series. I guess it's 2-game series.
No, it's a series
because he was not healthy, obviously, for the Cavs series, but the one game where he was sort of healthy before he got hurt again was, I think it was game 3? I'm totally blanking on it, but he had like 13 points in the first half and was really taking it to Evan Mobley. So I wonder if Julius like can harken back to that a little bit and find some rhythm.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I think I'm gonna ask you about Randle specifically and where you're at on him in segment 2. The last thing I'll say about the Max Strus thing is, if there's one thing to watch that I think people that haven't watched the Cavs, again, very early so far this year, that has stood out is Max Strus and Isaac Okoro as well are really crashing the glass from the wing. Strus has had set a new career high in rebounds twice already. He's averaging like 9 or something a game. Okoro's crashing the glass. People may remember the Cavs having a real issue on the glass against the Knicks in the playoffs. So to me, that has felt very intentional to have their wings really crash the glass, get rebounds. Jared Allen being back, I wonder if that changes things at all. If they'll trust the two bigs to do a better job than they have in the past to stop offensive rebounds, to actually clean the glass out a little bit. But look for the wings to crash. Look for the wings to get rebounds. And if Max Strus gets double-digit rebounds again, I'm just going to be like, sure. Okay. I guess it's just a thing you're doing now, Max. Good for you that you're now just a double-digit, double guy from the wing, apparently. All right. We're going to talk about the Knicks side of it yet coming up next. Julius Randle specifically, and they made some additions as well. And I want to pick Gavin's brain on just them getting DiVincenzo and really doubling down on having all of the big wings, which is a very nice thing to have. But we'll do that coming up right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On and an official partner of the NFL. They have a great deal for you right now as well. You can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. The FanDuel app is so easy to use. They have a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And so if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. And dare I say, tip off with the NBA season as well. It's FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so you've mentioned Randall, Gavin, and Brunson. What has been the story with those guys as the Knicks have started this season?
Yeah, so two different issues, maybe. Brunson over-prepared, Randall maybe a little under zone. Brunson obviously coming off the first season of his career where he was the number one option and very high volume number one option at times, and then a playoffs where he, like, it was not 3 games of doing it like it was in Dallas. It was I guess it was 11 games of doing it, and particularly those last 3 games against the Heat, that it felt like he was like fitting 20 games into one. He was doing so much, and then didn't get any time off over the summer. Like, had to go play for quote unquote, got to go play for Team USA over the summer, and travel throughout Asia, which I'm sure was an incredible time and an incredible experience, but it was exhausting because he also had to do a lot there. That was disappointing, probably a little bit emotionally draining. He also got married, which was great. But my point is the guy did not really have a second of rest. And I think because of that, the Knicks were very, very cautious with him in preseason and ramping him up. And he's had no rhythm coming into the season. This is a guy who's one of the best, like, 5 to 10 foot scorers on planet Earth in like recent NBA history. He's absolutely elite in that territory, and he has been horrific. I think he's something like 6 for 26 this year in that range. He's shooting 29% overall on twos, when last year he was like a 55% shooter on twos. So he has been really poor there, and I wouldn't expect that to continue. Like, I would assume one of these 2 Cleveland games, he's going to have a moment where he absolutely cooks from that range. He's also taking more threes this year, which is something that I really encourage him to do. You see, you guys are obviously very familiar with that concept with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, but most of the high volume short guard scorers in the league are great 3-point shooters on volume. Brunson is super efficient. He only took 4.5 per game last year, which is about half as many as most of those guys take. He made 8 of them against the Hawks. So I'm hoping for more of that from him. Randall, a different story. Obviously coming off of ankle surgery, didn't really start playing 5-on-5 again until training camp. So I think for him, it's just a rhythm thing. He appears to be in fantastic shape, but he's been very turnover prone. He's somehow shooting even worse than Brunson from 2-point range. I think Drew Holiday really got in his head. The Celtics had Holiday guarding him the first game, and Randall was like, all right, small guy, I'm going to go at him. And that did not go well. And since then, he has just not been able to make a shot close to the rim. 1 for 12 this year, stat from Fred Katz, the Athletic, shout out. He's been 1 for 12 in the restricted area. So he's been putrid there, almost inexplicably putrid there. So both those guys, you would expect some regression to the mean, but I think it's fair to say that it's concerning that 2 out of the Knicks' 3 games, those 2 had just about their 2 worst combined shooting performances as Knicks this early in the season, which is crazy.
Yeah, you mentioned the Brunson 3-point thing. It's like almost double the number of 3-pointers per game. Again, that's a 3-game sample size. We can't sit here and say like that's going to be the new normal for Jalen Brunson. But is that something like they were being very intentional about? Were they saying, hey, like we need you to do this and ramp up your volume? Is that just like a weird part of the season? Like, what's your read on if that's like a real part of Brunson's game now, that he might take maybe not 8 a game, but get up to 6 or 6.5, something like that?
Yeah, he's just weirdly, for someone who is a just fantastic shooter, he's never been a high volume guy. I don't think he ever took more than 3 per game while he was in Dallas. Last year in the Knicks, as I mentioned earlier, only took about 4.5 threes per game. There are a couple of reasons for that. Like he doesn't have the fastest release in the world. Obviously, he's not like a monster athlete. And like, even though he has an elite handle, like he's good generating separation going downhill. Doesn't totally have like a step back 3 in his game, but it seems like he's made a concerted effort to get better at shooting those pull-up threes, like get better at taking quick trigger ones if guys are playing a little bit too far off of him. And I think it mostly comes down to the fact that he's just so impossible to stop getting into the lane, and he has a million different answers to whatever question you want to pose to him as a defender when he gets into the lane, that he's just so confident in that part of his game. He's kind of like, why should I take a whole bunch of threes? And it's defensible, but I also think it's essential. 1, for the Knicks to open up their offense, and 2, he's just noted for his own durability. Like obviously he's a thick boy, lot of season there, as many as you could fit. But he's going to get hurt eventually. He's going to get older, and like taking all those hits is just not great for his career longevity. So I think he has made it a focal point to add more volume to his game. And I think he just knows it's good for him and it's good for the team if he can get up as many as possible.
What else has stood out to you as far as the Knicks with, whether it be bringing in DiVincenzo, whether it's Randall, is it RJ Barrett stuff? Is it Quentin Grimes? Is that I'm personally a huge Quentin Grimes guy. What to you has been another standout thing with the Knicks so far? And again, very early 3-game sample size here.
I think it's that I'm not sure how I feel about Dante DiVincenzo yet, and I expected to be such a big fan of his, and I spent all offseason kind of like singing his praises and talking about how it was going to be a seamless fit with the shared Villanova DNA. Now four former guys from those 2 national championship teams on the roster, and just his ability to play passing lanes and be a playmaker defensively, and essentially replace Obi Toppin, who was used as kind of just like a spacer on offense, with a better version of that. And he's had one really good game against the Hawks, 2 kind of iffy games after a preseason where he didn't hit a lot of shots. And my issue at the end of the day is less when DiVincenzo kind of is who he is, which is a really nice bench piece and someone who could fit right in as a starter. And I think insurance for the day, if it comes when the Knicks trade Emmanuel Quickley or Quentin Grimes. But I think my fear there is you're just losing Grimes minutes. And like you, I am a massive, massive fan of his. I think he is, like, if you ask me, like, which guy on this roster is most likely to still be there 6-7 years from now, like, he would probably be the number 1 guy, even over Brunson. He is just such a tailor-made fit for literally any team, but particularly for what the Knicks need. And I think he was very good against the Celtics and hasn't shot that well the last 2 games. And my biggest takeaway on that is he just gets very little chance to get into a rhythm because he's not getting a lot of touches. And when he does get touches, it's saying like, hey, you better put it up, because if like it's not coming back soon necessarily. And this is a guy who has an opportunity to, I think throwing a name out there like Desmond Bane is lofty, because Bane has just turned himself into one of the better scorers in the NBA. But being Bane light in that he should be taking probably like 10 threes a game and hitting 4 of them and adding in a couple like blow by drives of hard closeouts every single night. And I just don't think he gets an opportunity to do that or get into that kind of rhythm, because the minutes that I think probably should be his playing with the bench where he could be a little bit more of a focal point are gone, because you have to give DiVincenzo those minutes. And on nights when DiVincenzo is playing well, he's going to play more with the starters. And I would just rather that be Quentin Grimes. So that's a little bit surprising. The other thing that really stood out against the Pelicans, and this is a bigger picture thing that I don't know if the Cavs deal with this as much, but maybe at the guard position was just like how small and relatively unathletic the Knicks looked. And look, that was true last year, and they still made the second round. They still could have made the conference finals. Like Miami has that same issue to some degree, and they still find a way to make the finals every single year. But that's the direction the NBA is going, like really big, really skilled guys. And I'm not sure if the Knicks are quite there. Also, third and final point, whichever one of these you want to expand on, RJ Barrett. It's been really good to start this year, which has been nice.
RJ Barrett feels like, to me, like the way to go, because I think when he got going in that playoff series, I thought it was a big deal. I thought when after he had a bad game 1, he, I think, was pretty decent the rest of the series as far as my memory tells me. And if Cleveland has a defensive weakness, I think it is just, not that Barrett's going to be your alpha lead scorer type from the wing, but can he attack Max Strus? Can he attack? Does Okoro start? And do they have to find ways for that? Can he attack Karis LeVert? I think that's an opportunity, frankly, Gavin, for the Knicks to have some of the advantages they have. If Barrett can be big in that series, he's absolutely an X factor.
Yeah, look, he was coming into the playoffs. He was my single biggest concern. I was making predictions that, like, all right, by the end of the series, like he might not be starting games, or like his role will be significantly reduced. And there were moments where it was a little bit, but I would say all in all, he was probably the Knicks' 3rd best player behind Brunson and Mitchell Robinson over the course of that series. And I thought they were, like, especially in game 2, where he really started going like Karis LeVert. I thought that was a big moment, like where like the Cavs made an adjustment and the Knicks were able to punish that adjustment, because RJ was a more efficient version of the guy we saw in the regular season. And the bigger thing was just that his process was so much better in the playoffs than we'd ever seen it consistently be, in terms of like consciously like manipulating a defense with the intent to pass instead of always trying to score and like kind of as a Hail Mary passing the ball. And that has thankfully carried over to this season. Like he has been like really sharp about getting other guys involved. He's played about as unselfishly as I've ever seen him play. And while the shooting percentages aren't like like way better than usual. Like I think his jumper looks pretty good, and he's had stretches in his career which look really good, and he's at stretches where he's looked like someone who's like never shot a basketball before. So really, really varies with him. But I think it's super encouraging how he started this year, and if that's just who he is, like that'll kind of cushion the Knicks against some regression in other areas that may or may not be there this year.
Yeah. All right. We're going to talk about what we're looking for in this game. And we actually have an in-pod injury update that I'll reveal top of the segment. Not great for the Cavs is what I'll say. We'll talk about that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Gametime is my personal favorite way to buy tickets now. I was in New York this past August. People that have listened to Locked On Cavs have heard me tell the story before, but I was in New York. We done these ads and I said, all right, I'm going to try it out. And I planned on buying tickets for Liberty Aces on Gametime. And guess what? I got a great deal. I saved money. I got to see the view from my seat. And my friends and I were happy because we got to go see a great game at a jam-packed Barclays Center. But we didn't have to pay as much as we might have on some of those other sites. They have last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Easy to find and buy tickets for any kind of event in your area, not just sports, but concerts and the comedy shows, everything. There's also a game time guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. How great is that? You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps, and there's no hidden fees. You know the price up front with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price. That is guaranteed. All right, for the Cleveland Cavaliers tomorrow, no Jared Allen. No Darius Garland, no Ty Jerome, and double checking to make sure I get the Donovan Mitchell part of this right. Donovan Mitchell is questionable, so TBD if he's going to play or not, but no Garland, no Allen, no Ty Jerome. 2 of those names obviously much more important than the others. Gavin, this gets to, I think, what we talked about earlier. This is going to feel like a big moment. I believe one of these games at least is nationally televised, but not having key pieces for Cleveland, I think takes away some of, frankly, what we can learn in the interest for me a little bit, unfortunately. That's just the reality of it.
When you said all that, I felt like a pit in my stomach because I was like, oh, this is just such a game that the Knicks would lose in the past. And I don't know, maybe less so last season and we'll see this season, but I was just like, oh God, we're going to lose. They have all their guys are out. That's like someone like I think maybe it's the PTSD of Ricky Rubio dropping like a 38 piece on our head the one time. So maybe it's just maybe I need to do some therapy on that. But
you're scared of Max Drew's 50 ball coming your way is what you're telling me?
You know what? For whatever like mental edge the Knicks have on the Cavs, Max Drews has that on the entire Knicks team. So he's going to come out and be like, guys, just follow me. I know the path here. Maybe he'll have a 20 rebound game and improve that average. But yeah, I mean, to me, like no Jared Allen, like that's kind of the first focal point that screams to me like, all right, like Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson to a lesser extent better get it together. And Mitch has maybe been the Knicks' best player this year, but that's despite the fact that the guy who set the NBA's all-time field goal percentage record is shooting, I think, 40% so far this season. But like he should be able to get like just have like he had 10 offensive rebounds against the Pelicans. Like if he can come close to replicating that and like get a few dunks and like, I don't know, he might be like a bull seeing red against the Cavs again, because that was easily his career highlight so far. Like that game 5 like stands out at his magnum opus, I want to say, is that the term, of his career so far. And then Julius Randle, like I expect him to really try to go at Evan Mobley. And that was something I wanted to ask you, Chris, certainly before we wrapped up. I know he had the one 33-point game already this year. Are you seeing him making a leap? And like particularly like what are kind of the early results on his outside shooting? Because I think like whenever Alex and I would talk about the series, we were saying like, man, if Evan Mobley just became like a 36% 3-point shooter and like decent volume, like the whole Knicks defensive infrastructure of that series would blow up. And I'm sure that likewise for you guys, that's a big point of conversation.
Yeah, I love Evan Mobley. I think he's gonna be maybe the best player on this team at some point. I think that the potential is there. But I even though like he's more of his buckets this year on assists, it's like 45% versus 25% last year. He has like the 1 3-pointer. The jump shot has been a little inconsistent. It's been a lot of him getting downhill, and when he's being aggressive and decisive, he gets into guys' chests and makes an impact there. That's kind of been where it has showed up, in my opinion. The Knicks are an interesting test for this because Mitchell Robinson is stronger than him. His best moments, like he had some moments against Miles Turner the other night, who's a very good defender, a stronger guy. He had really good moments against Chet, who's pretty skinny, but he didn't like overwhelm him physically. He's not going to overwhelm Mitchell Robinson or Isaiah Hartenstein for that matter physically. That's not going to happen. And Cleveland I would imagine they're going to start him at the 5 again. Damian Jones has not been particularly good so far, and Tristan Thompson is Tristan Thompson, although he did play and do some vintage TT stuff.
Wait, did you see the quote he had today? He was
oh boy
about Josh Hart. I don't know why this was even a question, but it was like someone was asking like, hey, are you like comparable to Josh Hart as a rebounder, which is such a weird. And he said something. Unless I got totally duped here, and this was a fake quote, but it was something like,
I'm looking at this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He's like, I'm a fillet. He's a sirloin or something, which just seems.
Yeah. Is it?
I mean, one, I don't know why that comparison would exist. Two, like this is a guy who was like out of the league last year versus. And he's a center, and Josh Hart's a wing, who's a fantastic rebounding wing. But like, I don't know if Josh Hart like walk into like media day and like go up to Knicks media and say, "Hey, tell Tristan Thompson I'm a better rebounder than him. I'm coming for him if he plays." Like, how did this happen? What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. Now this is going to now be like what I spend the next like 5 hours of my life on, like NBA.
We might have to reconvene and do like a whole part 2 just on this.
Yeah, so the aggregation I'm seeing from that we're just the after dark version of the Locked On Cavs, Locked On Knicks crossover is just like it's just comparing the. Like Tristan in his prime was probably a fillet offensive rebounder, but isn't Josh Hart also like a high grade, like really good offensive rebounder? Like I feel like calling him
he's the fillet of wings, maybe the sirloin of everyone. But compare yourself to Mitchell Robinson if you want to challenge Tristan Thompson like that. Like if he Yeah, I don't know.
What was the question now? Is now I want to know. Like we're like I have so many questions about this, about the question specifically. Tristan's also just like very good at giving quotes that sound great. Like at media day, he had like a very politician-y kind of like we're hardworking people here in Cleveland kind of thing. And I'm just like, Tristan, you understand what you're doing here. And I was gonna say
that's how you keep getting those checks. You just say stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That's his role at this point.
He got a real big pop. I mean, that's what happens when you're on the 2016 title team, I guess, too. But got to tell you, Gavin, this is derailed. This has entirely derailed me. This is. I have so many questions about. Okay, now what if Tristan's a fillet, then like what is like Nikola Jokic as an offensive? Like I have so many questions now. You know, like
he's a cut of horse steak. I guess this is a painful conversation for me as a vegan, but I think that's the only answer.
Oh. He would never. I don't think Nikola Jokic would ever do that to a horse.
No, I would hope not. Yeah, that'd be cannibalism borderline. But yeah,
yeah, for him, yes, specifically. Yeah. But look, this game, I think the environment's going to be really big. I mean, the person I'm seeing this aggro on, Stefan Bondi, was like at Cavs Pacers on Saturday, like there, and he was here early. That tells you something that someone from the New York side of things was here early. Mm-hmm. But I feel like we're not going to learn as much as we might have hoped. Is where I end up with this, Gavin, just because of the injuries on the Cleveland side. That to me is very unfortunate.
No, I agree with you, and I think the Knicks internally will be looking at it as a fortunate thing and saying like, all right, like this is our chance to get right to like reestablish the identity we had last year, and like it's this fascinating thing that I think, and like we could maybe wrap on this, that I think Cleveland is going to have to grapple with as well. That like when you get maybe a little bit deeper and guys make individual leaps, how do you incorporate that while still maintaining your identity and not losing like a collective team strength at the expense of an individual like showing off a new skill? And I think that's been a big thing for the Knicks so far this year, where it seems like someone who comes in our pod a lot, Schwenny Poo, like he put that on Twitter. I thought it was like is absolutely right. Like he framed it as like the Knicks right now are a lot of guys trying to get right individually, and it's hurting them getting right as a team. And I think that's been a big story. And I think just because that series was the epitome of what Tom Thibodeau wants Knicks basketball to be, this is like the moment for the Knicks to be like, here's how we're going to play this year. And I wonder how close they get to that, and if they can maintain it coming out of these games.
Yes. All right. That's going to be it for this crossover. Gavin. It's always a pleasure. I suspect we may be doing this again later on in the year.
I would love to. We were joking about it on our pod the other day, but like that, we talk to you guys once a month. You were like unofficial co-hosts of Locked On Knicks at this point. So we really appreciate the patronage.
Well, wait until the any Mitchell stuff like kicks up into like higher gear.
Yeah.
Which are you out on Mitchell to the Knicks? Is that where we're going here? Are you saying like Cat? Let me ask you this as a ranking. Because I have a theory.
Yeah,
that Mitchell ends up with the Cavs long term, at least for a little bit longer, because I think like where he wants to go may not go for him fully. But if I were to ask you, rank these three guys of who you'd like the Knicks to get: Embiid, Cat, Mitchell. How would you rank them?
Oh wow, I weirdly think that Cat, just in terms of how he plays, is a better fit than Mitchell. But Embiid is like universe is ahead one out of all those guys, even if I have questions about him as a playoff guy and how he's going to age. Mitchell just has to be two because he's just a total playoff killer, and we've only seen Cat like mostly falter in the playoffs with like a few nice games mixed in. But like Mitchell, I think he's like him and Brunson doesn't make any sense to me on paper, and like I think it would be weird, and they'd both have to make adjustments. And defensively, like even though Mitchell's obviously improved on that end in Cleveland, like I wonder how far you could go with those two, and like they'd really have to structure their team around compensating for that. Like Cleveland, like I mean, like this is why it's so interesting. Like I thought Cleveland was the perfect fit for him, having Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, and then even last year in the playoffs, like you saw like the flaws there, and like part of that was like the issues of playing like two bigs who can't shoot together, combined with the flaws of playing two small guards together, and instead of like the strengths amplifying, the weaknesses amplified, and the Knicks would almost have to do the same thing. And I almost wonder if you're maxing out with that group and like there's just a very cap ceiling there. But again, Mitchell is just such a, like he's literally like the seventh like leading scorer all time in playoff history in terms of points per game. Like he's a killer. He's an incredible offensive player. So I'd have to take Mitchell second, despite the concern.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong. I might go Cat just because like I'm not the biggest Randall guy, so I wonder if like you turn Cat into Randall and like then you could just like keep all your big wings and like have the defensive infrastructure. But we will see. I'm sure this will not be the last time we talk about Donovan Mitchell and the Knicks on a podcast together, Gavin. All right, check out Locked On Knicks, check out Locked On Cavs. You haven't checked out Locked On NBA next to talk to y'all later after Cavs-Knicks. Evan and I'll have a recap. Gavin and Alex will have one up. And then again on Wednesday after the game in New York. Talk to y'all and enjoy the hoops, even with all